Question 1. The interrelationship between security policy layers and traffic inspection in checkpoint R.20 environments can be complex when multiple administrators are working on different layers. Suppose a senior administrator, Carter, configures a threat prevention policy on a shared layer, while Lopez, a junior admin, concurrently adds an access control rule in the network layer but forgets to publish his session. Traffic from a IP address, which should have been blocked, still reaches the internal server. What is the most likely explanation for this behavior? A. Threat prevention policies override unpublished access control changes. B. Traffic bypasses unpublished layers and is evaluated only on published unified policies. C. The system defaults to the last saved session regardless of publishing. D. The policy was partially published due to administrator permission conflicts. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. In checkpoint R.20, policy evaluation is layered, but only published layers are considered during traffic inspection. Lopez's unpublished session means his access control changes weren't enforced. According to the Smart Console operation model, each admin must publish their session for changes to apply. Shared layers, like threat prevention, are independent of network layers. Reference: Checkpoint Security Management Architecture, Unified Policy Enforcement. Question 2. In response to a recurring issue involving duplicate private IPs from two business units connecting to the same server, a network engineer, Ahmed, is tasked with configuring NAT to ensure unique IP presentation. He decides to implement static NAT for both sources. Which NAT behavior would most effectively prevent conflicts while allowing return traffic without manual intervention? A. Use hide NAT with IP pool to preserve session uniqueness. B. Configure static NAT with bidirectional rule per internal host. C. Use automatic NAT with separate global objects for each site. D. Configure proxy ARP for each native address in the external interface. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Static NAT maps one IP to another consistently and ensures return traffic works seamlessly because the firewall tracks the state. Hide NAT shares a single public IP and may not suit scenarios needing one mapping. Proxy ARP may be necessary for manual NAT but is not a substitute for rule logic. Static NAT with bidirectional configuration allows both incoming and outgoing connections. Reference: .R.20 NAT Administration Guide. Question 3. By comparing two clusters in a distributed checkpoint environment, an auditor notices one site experiencing intermittent failures in threat emulation services. Upon investigation, she finds that both sites have licenses installed, but only one has up-to-date contracts attached to the security gateway. What is the most likely cause of the service degradation at the failing site? A. The security gateway CPU is incompatible with emulation functions. B. The contract file is not required as long as the license is valid. C. The threat emulation blade requires an active contract to function. D. The site is using outdated threat signature updates from Smart Console. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Checkpoint blades such as threat emulation, IPS, and anti-bot require valid software contracts for access to signature and reputation updates. A license alone enables the product, but doesn't ensure ongoing functionality without active contracts. This is enforced via the contract file, which can be imported into Smart Update or via CLI. Reference: Checkpoint Licensing Administration Guide R.20. Question 4. Given the circumstances in which Tanaka, a security engineer, configures a site-to-site VPN between two gateways using shared secrets and encounters frequent Phase 2 negotiation failures, he investigates logs and finds that the encryption domains differ between peers. What would be the most effective way to resolve this issue? A. Change Phase 1 algorithms to match both gateways. B. Manually synchronize keys between gateways. C. Align encryption domains to match what each peer expects. D. Disable aggressive mode to force tunnel renegotiation. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Phase 2 quick mode failures often stem from mismatched encryption domains, which define what internal resources are protected by the tunnel. Each peer must agree on which networks are being encrypted. Phase 1 settings affect initial establishment, but Phase 2 depends on domain alignment. Reference: Checkpoint VPN Admin Guide, Site-to-Site VPN Troubleshooting, R.20. Question 5. To illustrate this point, a system analyst needs to analyze historical access to a critical database server. However, when querying SmartLog for specific entries, he finds no matching results for traffic he suspects was allowed. What is the most probable reason these events are not logged? A. The log server is running out of disk space. B. The access control rule does not have logging enabled. C. The logs were automatically archived by the management server. D. SmartLog indexing was disabled for stealth rules. Answer. Correct answer, B. Explanation. Unless explicitly configured, access control rules do not log by default. The rule base must have the log or detailed log option selected to generate entries. Log indexing issues or archiving would still leave partial records, but no log at all suggests rule-level misconfiguration. Reference: SmartLog and logging behavior in checkpoint R.20. Question 6. When considering Checkpoint's autonomous threat prevention capability, is Novak CISO asks her team to reduce manual tuning of its profiles while maintaining high protection. What action should the team take to fulfill this request effectively? A. Create multiple custom IPS profiles for each network segment. B. Enable autonomous threat prevention with optimizations. C. Migrate to manual IPS mode and disable signatures. D. Use legacy IPS with predefined exceptions. Answer. Correct answer, B. Explanation. Autonomous threat prevention app is designed to reduce manual policy management by using machine learning to adjust protections based on real-time context. It works with multiple blades, including IPS and anti-bot. Manual tuning is discouraged unless for legacy networks. Reference: Checkpoint R.20 Threat Prevention Admin Guide. Question 7. As illustrated by a security team deploying application control and URL filtering together in a unified policy, they discover that rules for blocking social media apply consistently across different network zones. What is the best way to resolve this inconsistency? A. Use separate policy packages for each network zone. B. Adjust a rule-based order to evaluate URL filtering before access control. C. Ensure blades are enabled on the gateway and active in the policy. D. Configure SmartView Monitor to check blade deployment status. Answer. Correct answer, C. Explanation. Unified policy in checkpoint R.20 depends on both blade activation and the gateway and policy configuration. Rules may appear in Smart Console, but unless the blades are enabled on the gateway, enforcement will not occur. Policy order matters, but non-active blades are ignored. Reference: Checkpoint Unified Policy Architecture, R.20. Question 8. In the absence of Smart Console access due to a corrupted management server database, a system administrator (SDLSF) needs to create a backup of the system using Gaia OS. What command should he use from CLI to generate a system-level backup that includes configuration: A. Save backup, B. Migrate export, C. Gaia backup create, D. Backup? Answer. Correct answer, D. Explanation. The correct CLI command for Gaia backup is backup, which includes system and configuration settings. Migrate export is for exporting the management database. Save backup and Gaia backup create are incorrect syntax. Backups can be stored locally or remotely and are managed via CLI or WebUI. Reference: Checkpoint Gaia OS CLI reference R.20. Question 9. Among the various reasons for cluster failover, Ista Dengilo, senior engineer, observes that member Intunode cluster XOR setup is in down state. The logs show no interface failure or link loss. Which factor would most likely cause this issue? A. Mismatching core XOR configuration between nodes. B. Clock desynchronization exceeding threshold. C. State synchronization port misconfiguration. D. License expiration on secondary member. Answer. Correct answer, C. Explanation. Cluster XOR depends on state synchronization to maintain session awareness. If this communication fails due to port misconfiguration, default up 8116, the affected member may move to down to prevent split brain scenarios. Clock sync affect VPNs, not clustering. Reference: Checkpoint Cluster XOR Admin Guide R.20. Question 10. Through careful analysis of permission profiles, a security manager finds that Is Ortega, a junior admin, can disable the threat emulation blade despite her profile stating Read only for threat prevention. What likely caused this discrepancy? A. Threat prevention settings are governed by separate smart console roles. B. Permission profiles were overridden using smart dashboard legacy settings. C. She was added to group with conflicting higher privileges. D. Threat prevention blades cannot be controlled via permission profiles. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. In checkpoint R.20, users may be assigned to multiple permission groups, and group conflicts are resolved in favor of higher privilege. Even if his or Tega's individual profile is restricted, group membership can override. Proper access control requires careful auditing of group permissions. Reference. Checkpoint R.20 Administrator Access Control Guide. Question 11. The underlying principle of creating effective security policies involves balancing accessibility with risk mitigation. In a multinational corporation, Ferguson creates a rule allowing HEP access to an internal ERM server for sales staff working remotely. However, an audit reveals that external parties exploited the same rule. Which best practice would have prevented this vulnerability while preserving access? A. Enabling secure acceleration and the HEP rule. B. Implementing user-based access with identity awareness. C. Applying NAT to hide the internal ERM address. D. Using stealth rules to block untrusted zones. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Identity awareness allows Checkpoint to enforce user and group-based access, ensuring only authenticated users like sales staff can reach internal systems, even from remote locations. This granularity prevents unauthorized external access. NAT hides addresses but doesn't limit who can connect. Secure Excel and stealth rules serve different purposes. Reference. Checkpoint R.20 Security Policy Best Practices. Question 12. The effectiveness of a multi-layered policy depends on how layers are combined and enforced. A security administrator adds a new inline layer with a drop action at the top of the rule base, believing it will only affect malicious traffic. However, legitimate traffic is also being blocked unexpectedly. What is the most likely reason for this behavior? A. Inline layers are evaluated before parent layer access rules. B. Drop action in inline layers overrides any matching except rules. C. The parent layer is missing a pass to inline layer rule. D. The inline layer was not published with the latest changes. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. Inline layers act like sub-policies and their rules are evaluated immediately when the parent rule is matched. If an inline layer begins with a drop rule and that layer is triggered early, or matching traffic is dropped, regardless of rules further down in the parent layer, this can mislead administrators expecting linear evaluation. Reference. Checkpoint R.20 Policy Layers and Inline Rules. Question 13. To what degree does enable HES inspection influence the effectiveness of application control and URL filtering blades? A. Say Indidate analyzes why blocked websites still load even though policies are correctly configured. What configuration is likely missing or incorrect? A. Identity awareness is not enforcing user-based access, but HES inspection is not enabled, so encrypted traffic is not inspected. C. Application control does not support wildcard domain filtering. D. Smart View Tracker is not logging blocked connections. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. With a HES inspection, Checkpoint cannot inspect encrypted HTTP so traffic domain URL filtering and application control ineffective against such connections. Even if domains are blocked, SALS hides the request details. Identity awareness helps with user mapping, but it doesn't decrypt traffic. Reference. R.HES Inspection Admin Guide. Question 14. Taking into account a case where a web application fails intermittently after NAT was applied, the logs show inconsistent source IPs. The application uses IP-based session validation. Which NAT configuration is most likely causing this issue? A. Hide NAT is used for multiple hosts behind one public IP. B. Manual static NAT with incorrect service definitions. C. NAT rules applied post-routing. D. Reverse DNS lookup failing during NAT resolution. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. Hide NAT shares a single public IP for multiple clients, resulting in inconsistent source IPs on the destination system if sessions span multiple devices. Is break session tracking for applications using IP validation. Static NAT preserves IP consistency. Reference. Checkpoint NAT Troubleshooting Guide, R.20. Question 15. With the advent of cloud backup strategies, Istijao is reviewing Gaia OS system backup procedures. He is required to implement a daily backup that includes all configuration, users, and license information while also ensuring disaster recovery in case of corruption. Which backup strategy best satisfies these requirements? A. Scheduled smart backup with local retention. B. Snapshot creation via CLI with FTP export. C. Manual save of object files from Smart Console. D. Daily configuration export via WebUI. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Snapshots in Gaia OS capture the entire system state including configuration, licenses, and user data, and can be scheduled and exported. CEP. This allows rapid recovery in case of corruption. Smart backup is deprecated and exporting objects doesn't include system-level data. Reference. Checkpoint Gaia OS Admin Guide, R.20. Question 16. The correlation between VPN encryption domains and route-based VPN deployment is often misunderstood. A junior admin configures overlapping encryption domains for two site-to-site VPN pairs. What is a likely consequence of this misconfiguration? A. VPN will fail to establish phase 1 due to hash mismatch. B. VPN tunnel will establish but no traffic will pass due to routing ambiguity. C. Encrypted packets will be forwarded to the wrong gateway. D. The firewall will reboot due to VPN key conflicts. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Overlapping encryption domains confuse VPN traffic routing, especially in route-based VPNs where grapesec tunnels rely on clear definitions. Even if phase 1 and phase 2 complete, traffic won't route correctly. This causes dropped sessions or timeouts. Phase 1 isn't affected by domains. Phase 2 is reference. Checkpoint VPN troubleshooting R.20. Question 17. In contrast to conventional log filtering tools, SmartLog offers index search functionality. Istarojan, an incident responder, attempts to filter logs using IP address and action but gets too many unrelated results. Which operator should he use to refine search results effectively? A and B. Match. C. Filter. D. Exact. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. SmartLog uses Boolean operators like an or and not for filtering to search only logs that match both IP and action and is used, for example, src on 0111 and action drop. Filter and exact are not valid operators. Reference. SmartLog filtering syntax guide R.20. Question 18. Throughout the course of role-based access control setup, a system administrator configures a read-only role in Gaia portal. However, the assigned user is still able to edit interface settings. Which step was likely skipped during role configuration? A. The user was assigned to the admin role group. B. WebView permissions were not saved in the portal. C. CLI role override was applied. D. Role was assigned but not linked to the user. Answer. Correct answer. D. Explanation. Defining a role in Gaia portal is not enough. It must be assigned to specific user account without linking. Users inherit default permissions which may be admin. The saving or applying isn't sufficient without explicit user role association. Reference. Gaia portal role management guide. Question 19. Examining the consequences of permission profile misconfigurations, a lead administrator discovers that Delgado, meant to only audit logs, was able to edit NAT rules in Smart Console. Which configuration change would best prevent this issue? A. Apply Smart Event read-only access. B. Remove Delgado from the network management group. C. Enforce permission profiles at domain level. D. Create a custom permission profile and assign it explicitly. Answer. Correct answer. D. Explanation. Checkpoint allows custom permission profiles to restrict administrative actions. Assigning Delgado to a log-only profile prevents access to configuration modules. Group assignments may override default permissions. Always explicitly assign least privilege roles. Reference. R.20 permission profiles admin guide. Question 20. Contrary to popular belief, placing an any except rule at the bottom of the rule base does not create default allow policy. However, is ANA configures this for troubleshooting, then forgets to remove it. What is the most critical risk of leaving this rule in production? A. Prevents logging of denied connections. B. Overrides threat prevention layers. C. Allows unfiltered traffic through all interfaces. D. Breaks VPN tunnel negotiation. Answer. Correct answer. See explanation. An any except rule without limitations permits unrestricted access across all zones and networks, negating security policies entirely. It is the most dangerous misconfiguration, especially if left unintentionally. It must be removed immediately after troubleshooting. Reference. Checkpoint rule-based best practice R.20. Question 21. The development of high-availability configurations using ClusterXL requires deep understanding of failover logic. In a two-node ActiveSM by setup is Cotton, a network engineer, observes that the secondary member remains in, initializing for over 20 minutes. What is the most probable cause for the cluster member failing to join ActiveSM by synchronization? A. ClusterXL protocol version mismatch. B. Outbound NAT not defined for sync interface. C. Anti-spoofing not disabled on sync interface. D. SDP delay on connected switches. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Anti-spoofing must be disabled on the ClusterXL sync interface. If it's not, synchronization packets may be dropped by the firewall itself, preventing state syncing and causing the node to stay in. Initializing. It cause delays, but not 20 minutes. Reference. Checkpoint ClusterXL admin guide. R.20 sync configuration requirements. Question 22. By evaluating the performance metrics of a firewall gateway running on Gaia OS, Mr. Hossein notices that EPU usage spikes every 30 minutes, leading to packet drops. Which command would most effectively help him identify the top process consuming system resources in real time? A. CPView. B. Topi Yolafiti. D. PS aux. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. The top command gives a live view of processes and their CU memory usage on Gaia OS. It's the go-to for pinpointing which daemon or process causes spikes. CPView provides summary metrics. PS aux is not real-time. Yolafiti is used for EPU core binding. Reference. Gaia OS client monitoring commands. R.20. Question 23. To better understand threats originating from malware callbacks, a security administrator enables the anti-bot blade, yet Smart Event shows several callbacks classified as allowed. Which configuration step was likely missed? A. Anti-bot policy was not applied to the threat prevention layer. HES inspection was disabled for outbound traffic. C. Geoprotection was not enabled. D. Its profile did not include command and control protections. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. Enabling the anti-bot blade alone is not enough. It must be included in the threat prevention policy with specific rules determining what to detect and block. Without this, detection occurs, but no enforcement action is taken. Reference. Checkpoint Threat Prevention Guide. R.20. Anti-bot deployment. Question 24. In light of recent developments, multiple admins working on security policies may unintentionally overwrite each other's work. Suppose Mr. Barrett logs into Smart Console, makes rule changes, and logs out without publishing. Meanwhile, is Alan publishes a session. What happens to Mr. Barrett's changes? A. They are auto-published with his Alan session. B. They are saved in the database, but not active. C. They are discarded unless explicitly published. D. They are visible in the audit log as unpublished. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Checkpoint uses. A session-based change model. Each admin must publish their own session. If Mr. Barrett logs out without publishing, his changes are discarded, not retained or merged with others. Is Alan's session is unaffected. Reference. Checkpoint Smart Console Session Management. R.20. Question 25. While examining a newly deployed VPN mesh community, Isferra finds that two gateways are not encrypting traffic between each other. The other gateways in the community work fine. Which configuration issue is the most likely cause? A. The two gateways were added as satellites instead of center members. B. VPN domains were incorrectly configured as host objects. C. The shared secret mismatch is preventing phase 2. D. Mesh VPN community requires pre-shared keys, not certificates. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. In a mesh community, only members defined as center gateways can create VPN tunnels to each other. If the two gateways were added as satellites, they won't communicate directly. Satellites can only connect to center members. Reference: Checkpoint VPN admin guide. Mesh versus star communities. Question 26. From a practical standpoint, understanding the order of NAT rule evaluation is crucial. In a production network, an admin creates a manual NAT rule to override an existing automatic rule, but traffic is still using the automatic translation. Why is the manual NAT rule not being applied? A. NAT rules are selected based on first match, and automatic NAT appears earlier. B. Manual NAT must be published separately from the policy. C. Manual NAT applies only TCP and NTFT traffic. D. Automatic NAT has priority over manual NAT in R.20. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. Checkpoint evaluates NAT rules top-down, just like access rules. If the automatic rule is higher in the rule base, it's applied first. To override it, manual rules must be moved above. Rule type does not determine priority. Order does. Reference. R.20 NAT rule-based evaluation logic. Question 27. The central argument for proper logging practices is to ensure forensic capabilities. A junior admin disables log indexing to reduce CPU usage but leaves retention settings unchanged. What is the likely impact of this action? A. Logs will be permanently stored without the ability to query them. B. Logs will no longer be generated for smart event analysis. C. Archived logs cannot be restored unless re-indexed. D. Only real-time logs will be kept in RAM and deleted. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Disabling indexing allows logs to be stored but prevents efficient querying and analysis. Archived logs remain on disk but must be re-indexed manually for restoration or analysis in SmartView. Log generation and retention still happen. Reference: Checkpoint log indexing and retention R.20 logging guide. Question 20. The impact of faulty interface configuration on cluster-XL operations is severe. Ibris notices that a monitored interface on the secondary member is always down even though the physical link is connected. What should be checked first to resolve this? A. Interface bonding configuration. B. Gaia OS interface state in ifconfig. C. Monitored interface status in cluster-XL. D. Switch port security mismatch. Answer. Correct answer. D. Explanation. If the physical interface is connected but marked down in cluster-XL, the issue may lie in switch-level port security, VLAN mismatch, or incorrect duplex speed negotiation. These physical layer mismatches often present as phantom link failures. Reference: cluster-XL troubleshooting and interface monitoring. R.20. Question 29. As a result of recurring false positives, Iqbal decides to create an exception for a specific internal server that falsely triggers antivirus alerts. However, despite the exception, alerts continue to be generated. Which mistake likely caused the exception to fail? A. The exception was created at the rule level, not the profile level. B. The internal server was listed by hostname, not IP. C. Threat emulation and antivirus exceptions must be created separately. D. The exception was created but not enforced in the policy. Answer. Correct answer. D. Explanation. After creating an exception in threat prevention, it must be enforced by publishing and installing the policy. Simply creating the exception doesn't apply. Also, exception logic depends on profile, scope, and exact object matching. Reference: R.20 threat prevention exception handling. Question 30. The prevailing attitude towards simplifying policy management is to use a unified policy. However, when deploying URL filtering and application control, Leon finds they don't appear in the rule base. Why might these blades be missing from the unified policy view? A. Threat emulation must be enabled for them to display. B. The management server license doesn't include those blades. C. Smart Console wasn't updated to the latest release. D. Blades must be enabled on the gateway and in the policy package. Answer. Correct answer, D. Explanation. For application control on URL filtering to appear in Smart Console, they must be enabled on the security gateway and included in the security policy package. Without this, even licensed blades won't show up. Reference, Checkpoint Unified Policy Admin Guide, Blade Management R.20.